The rain drummed steadily against the windows of Stephen Curry's home office in Atherton, California. It was a rare quiet evening in March, the kind that reminded him of simpler times before the championships, before the fame, before life became a whirlwind of cameras and expectations. He was reviewing game footage when his phone buzzed with an unknown number. "Hello?" Stephen answered, expecting another interview request or business call. "Steph? Man, I don't know if you remember me, but this is Marcus Williams. We used to—" The voice cracked slightly, carrying years of uncertainty. Stephen's hand froze on his computer mouse. Marcus Williams. The name hit him like a freight train, carrying with it the scent of summer afternoons in Charlotte, North Carolina, the sound of basketballs bouncing on cracked asphalt, and the memory of a friendship that had shaped who he was before the world knew his name. "Marcus." Stephen's voice was barely above a whisper. "Marcus from Elmwood. Street? Oh my God, man, of course I remember you." On the other end of the line, Marcus let out a shaky laugh that held 20 years of separation. "Yeah, that's me. Look, I know you're probably busy with everything you've got going on, but I saw you on TV during the All-Star game last month, and I had to try to reach out." Stephen closed his laptop, giving Marcus his full attention. Outside, the California rain continued its gentle percussion, but his mind was transported to those sweltering summers in North Carolina, where he and Marcus had been inseparable. They were both 12 when they met at the local community center, two kids who bonded over their shared love of basketball and their dreams that seemed too big for their small neighborhood. "Where are you now?" Stephen asked, settling back in his chair. "I'm still in Charlotte, actually." "Never left," Marcus replied, and Stephen could hear the weight of unspoken stories in those words. "I work at the same community center where we used to play, coaching kids now. Been doing it for about 8 years." The irony wasn't lost on Stephen. While he had traveled the world, playing in sold-out arenas and winning championships, his childhood best friend had stayed home, giving back to the community that raised them both. "Marcus, man, I can't believe it's really you. I've thought about you so many times over the years. I always wondered." Stephen paused, remembering how they'd lost touch when his family moved to Toronto when his father Dell got traded to the Raptors. They were 14 then, and despite promises to keep in touch, life had pulled them in different directions. "Yeah, I wondered too," Marcus said softly. "Watched every one of your games I could, man. Told everyone who'd listen that Stephen Curry used to be my best friend. Most people didn't believe me." There was no bitterness in Marcus's voice, just a quiet pride that made Stephen's chest tighten with emotion. He remembered how Marcus had always been his biggest supporter, even when other kids doubted Stephen's potential because of his size. "They should have believed you," Stephen said firmly. "You were there when I was just a scrawny kid who couldn't even make the high school varsity team. You never doubted me, even when I doubted myself." The conversation stretched on for over an hour, both men carefully navigating the gap that 2 decades had created. Marcus talked about his work with underprivileged youth, how he'd gotten his coaching certification, and how he'd never married but considered the kids at the center his family. Stephen shared stories about his own children, about the pressure of fame, and about how success sometimes felt lonely despite being surrounded by people. As they talked, Stephen found himself remembering specific moments. The time Marcus had given him his only pair of decent basketball shoes because Stephen's had fallen apart. The way Marcus had stood up to bigger kids who made fun of Stephen's shooting form. The countless hours they'd spent at the outdoor court, playing until the streetlights came on and their mothers called them home. "Marcus," Stephen said as their conversation began to wind down, "I want to see you. Are you free this weekend?" There was a pause. "Steph, you don't have to." "No, I want to. I need to. It's been too long, and honestly, talking to you tonight, it reminds me of who I was before all this craziness. I miss that." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "The center is having our annual fundraising basketball tournament this Saturday. It's nothing fancy, just local teams and families. But if you wanted to come by, send me the details," Stephen said without hesitation. "I'll be there." After they hung up, Stephen sat in his office for a long time, staring out at the rain. His wife Aisha found him there an hour later, still lost in thought. "Everything okay?" she asked, settling into the chair across from his desk. Stephen looked at her, his eyes bright with an emotion she hadn't seen in a while. "I just talked to my best friend from childhood. Haven't spoken to him in 20 years. That's wonderful, babe. How did he find you?" "He didn't really. He just called. Said he'd been thinking about reaching out for years." Stephen shook his head in amazement. "He's been coaching kids in Charlotte this whole time, giving back to the same community where we grew up." Aisha studied her husband's face. "You're going to see him, aren't you?" "This Saturday. He's running a fundraising tournament at the community center." Stephen paused, an idea beginning to form. "Aisha, what if we did more than just visit? What if we really helped?" She smiled, recognizing the look in his eyes, the same one he got when he was planning something that would surprise everyone. "What are you thinking?" But Stephen was already reaching for his phone, scrolling through his contacts. There were calls to make, arrangements to put in place. Marcus Williams had given him the greatest gift by reaching out, a connection to his authentic self. Now Stephen wanted to give something back, something that would honor their friendship and the community that had shaped them both. The rain continued to fall outside, but inside Stephen Curry was planning something that would remind the world why some friendships are worth more than any championship ring. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of crisp spring air that made Charlotte feel alive. The East Side Community Center buzzed with activity as families began arriving for the annual fundraising tournament. Marcus Williams stood in the gymnasium doorway, adjusting the banner that read, "Shooting for Dreams Annual Basketball Tournament," for the third time in 10 minutes. His nerves were getting the better of him. Stephen Curry was supposed to show up today. Part of Marcus still couldn't believe their phone conversation had been real. He'd been rehearsing what he would say, how he would act, trying to balance his excitement with the fear that fame might have changed his old friend beyond recognition. "Coach Marcus, you okay? You've been messing with that banner forever," called out Jamal, a 15-year-old who'd been coming to the center since he was 8. He dribbled a worn basketball with the easy confidence Marcus had tried to instill in all his players. "Yeah, I'm fine, Jamal. Just want everything to look right today." Marcus forced a smile, but his eyes kept drifting to the parking lot visible through the front windows. The tournament was modest by any professional standard. 8 local teams, registration fees of $20 per player, and a small concession stand run by volunteers. They hoped to raise maybe $3,000 for new equipment and facility improvements. The gym itself showed its age. Scuffed wooden floors, bleachers that creaked when fully extended, and basketball hoops that had seen better decades. But it was home. Marcus had learned to play on this court, and now he was teaching another generation to love the game here. Kids from the neighborhood came after school on weekends, whenever they needed a safe space to just be kids. Some came from single-parent homes, others from families struggling to make ends meet. What they all had in common was that basketball gave them hope, structure, and dreams bigger than their circumstances. "Coach, is it true?" asked Destiny, a 12-year-old girl who was one of the best players in the youth league despite being the smallest. "Is Stephen Curry really coming here today?" Marcus knelt down to her level. "He said he would, sweetheart. But even if he doesn't make it, we're still going to have an amazing tournament, right?" She nodded enthusiastically, but Marcus could see the excitement in her eyes. These kids had grown up watching Stephen Curry highlights on YouTube, imitating his impossible three-point shots in their own games. To them, he wasn't just a basketball player. He was proof that being small didn't mean you couldn't be great. At 10:30 a.m., just as the first games were beginning, Marcus heard a commotion near the front entrance. Through the glass doors, he saw a small crowd gathering in the parking lot, phones coming out, voices rising in excitement. Then he saw him. Stephen Curry walked through the front doors of the East Side Community Center, looking exactly like he did on television, yet somehow completely different. He was dressed casually, jeans, a simple Warriors t-shirt, and sneakers that probably cost more than most families here spent on shoes in a year. but his smile was the same one Marcus remembered from their childhood, genuine and warm. What surprised Marcus most was that Stephen wasn't alone. Behind him came a small group of people carrying bags and equipment, and Marcus recognized some faces from Stephen's social media, members of his foundation team. "Marcus?" Stephen's voice carried across the suddenly quiet gymnasium, and then he was walking quickly toward his old friend, arms outstretched. The hug they shared was witnessed by everyone in the gym, but it felt private, intimate. 20 years of separation collapsed into that moment, two men remembering the boys they used to be. "You came," Marcus whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Of course I came," Stephen replied, pulling back to look at his friend. "Man, you look exactly the same. Well, maybe a little grayer around the edges." Marcus laughed, wiping his eyes. "You're one to talk, superstar." The kids in the gym had gone completely silent, staring in disbelief. Destiny was clutching Jamal's arm, her mouth hanging open. Other children were tugging on their parents' sleeves, whispering, "Is that really him?" Stephen noticed their audience and grinned. "So, are you going to introduce me to your team or what?" What happened next would be talked about in the neighborhood for years to come. Stephen spent the next hour moving through the gym like he belonged there, learning names, asking about school, shooting around with kids who could barely contain their excitement. He wasn't performing for cameras or fulfilling an obligation. He was genuinely connecting with each child. "Your form is really good," he told Destiny as they practiced free throws together. "Keep your elbow straight. Follow through with your wrist. Just like that. Perfect." He played in pickup games with teenagers who tried to guard him. With the intensity of NBA defenders, he signed autographs on everything from basketballs to homework folders to the cast on 8-year-old Tyler's broken arm. But it was his interaction with Marcus that touched everyone who witnessed it. Throughout the morning, Stephen kept deferring to his friend, making sure everyone knew that Marcus was the real hero here, the one who showed up every day to make a difference in these kids' lives. "Coach Marcus taught me everything I know about basketball," Stephen told a group of wide-eyed children during a break between games. "He's the reason I never gave up on my dreams." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "That's not true, Steph. You had the talent. Talent is common," Stephen interrupted, his voice carrying the wisdom of someone who'd seen the highest levels of competition. "What's rare is having someone believe in you when you don't believe in yourself. Marcus did that for me every single day when we were kids." As the morning progressed, Marcus began to notice that Stephen's team members were setting up equipment around the gym, cameras, but also sound equipment, and what looked like presentation screens. When he asked Stephen about it, his friend just smiled mysteriously. "Trust me," Stephen said. "Just like old times, right?" And just like old times, Marcus found himself following Stephen's lead, even though he had no idea where they were heading. Some things, he realized, never changed. Stephen had always been the dreamer, the one who could see possibilities where others saw only obstacles. The tournament continued, but everyone could sense that something bigger was building. Stephen's presence had transformed what was supposed to be a small community fundraiser into something else entirely. Local news crews had arrived, drawn by social media posts from parents and kids. The parking lot was filling up with cars as word spread through the neighborhood. By noon, the modest community center was packed with more people than it had ever held, all of them drawn by the magic of witnessing something authentic and beautiful, a friendship renewed, a community celebrated, and the promise that the best was yet to come. Marcus looked around at the controlled chaos, at the joy on every face, at his childhood friend who had become a global superstar, but was still, somehow, just Steph from Elmwood Street. "What have you done?" Marcus asked, but he was smiling. Stephen's eyes twinkled with the same mischief Marcus remembered from their youth. "We're just getting started, brother. Just getting started." The afternoon sun streamed through the high windows of the community center as Stephen gathered everyone around center court. Word had spread throughout Charlotte, and the gymnasium was now packed with over 300 people, families from the neighborhood, former players Marcus had coached, local media, and curious onlookers who'd heard something special was happening. Marcus stood beside his friend, still not entirely sure what Stephen had planned. The morning had been magical enough. Seeing Stephen connect with the kids, watching him play pickup games with teenagers, witnessing the joy on every face in the building. But Marcus knew Stephen well enough to recognize that familiar gleam in his eye, the one that had always preceded his biggest surprises. "Can I have everyone's attention?" Stephen called out, his voice carrying easily across the suddenly quiet gymnasium. "First, I want to thank Coach Marcus Williams for inviting me back to where it all started for both of us." Applause filled the air, but Stephen raised his hand to continue. 20 years ago, Marcus and I were just two kids with big dreams and very little else. We'd come to this gym after school, on weekends, whenever we could, and we'd play until they kicked us out. Marcus believed in me when I was too small for my high school varsity team, when college scouts wouldn't look twice at me, when everyone said I'd never make it. In the NBA, Marcus felt his eyes welling up, remembering those afternoons when they'd practiced Stephen's unorthodox shooting form for hours, working on the technique that would eventually revolutionize basketball. "But what I learned today," Stephen continued, his voice growing stronger, "is that while I was chasing my dreams in arenas around the world, Marcus was here building dreams for hundreds of kids just like we used to be." He gestured toward the group of young players who'd been following him around all day like devoted disciples. "Destiny over here has a shot that reminds me of myself at her age. Pure, confident, unstoppable. Jamal's got handles that would make some of my teammates jealous. Tyler here, even with his broken arm, was trying to guard me like he was going for Defensive Player of the Year." The kids beamed, standing a little taller as their hero acknowledged them by name. "And I found out that this community center, this place that helped shape both Marcus and me, is struggling. The roof leaks, the heating system breaks down every winter. They need new equipment, and Coach Marcus has been paying for a lot of it out of his own pocket because he believes every kid deserves a chance to chase their dreams." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. He'd never told anyone about the money he'd been spending, the second job he'd taken to help keep the center's programs running. Stephen turned to face his friend directly. "Marcus, you remember what you told me the night before my family moved to Toronto? When I was crying because I thought our friendship was over?" Marcus's breath caught. He remembered that night vividly, two 14-year-old boys sitting on his front porch, both trying not to cry. "You told me that real friendship isn't about being in the same place. It's about carrying each other in your heart and making each other better, even from far away." Stephen's voice was thick with emotion now. "You said that if I ever made it to the NBA, I should remember where I came from and help other kids find their dreams too." The gymnasium was completely silent except for the sound of Marcus wiping his eyes. "Well, brother, I made it. And I never forgot what you taught me about giving back." Stephen nodded toward his foundation team, who began wheeling out a large presentation screen. "Marcus Williams, in honor of our friendship and everything you've done for this community, the Stephen and Aisha Curry Family Foundation is donating $1 million to completely renovate the East Side Community Center." The words hit the crowd like a thunderclap. Gasps and shouts erupted throughout the gymnasium. Parents grabbed each other, kids jumped up and down, and several people openly wept. But Stephen wasn't finished. "We're going to build a new gymnasium with state-of-the-art equipment, renovate the entire facility, create a computer lab for educational programs, and establish a permanent endowment to ensure this center can serve kids for generations to come." Marcus staggered, reaching out to grab Stephen's arm for support. "Steph, I can't. This is too much." "It's not enough," Stephen replied firmly. "And there's more." The screen behind them lit up with architectural renderings of a transformed community center. Bright, modern, equipped with everything a youth development program could need. The new facility will be called the Marcus Williams Community Center, because this man right here has been the real MVP in this neighborhood for decades. The crowd erupted again, but Marcus was shaking his head through his tears. "No, Steph, you can't name it after me. This is your gift, your generosity. Our friendship," Stephen corrected him. "This represents our friendship. You stayed here and did the hard work, day after day, year after year, with no cameras, no recognition, no glory. You're the hero in this story, Marcus. I just got lucky enough to have a platform to help. Destiny broke free from the crowd and ran to Marcus, wrapping her small arms around his waist. Soon, all the kids he coached were surrounding him, and Marcus found himself in the center of a group hug that seemed to encompass his entire world. But Stephen had one more surprise. There's something else, Marcus. I know you've been working 2 jobs to keep this place running. Well, the foundation is also creating a new position. Director of Youth Development for the Marcus Williams Community Center. Full salary, benefits, and a budget to expand programming throughout Charlotte. If you'll take it, that is. Marcus looked at his friend through tears that he'd stopped trying to hide. Are you offering me a job? I'm offering you the chance to do what you've already been doing, but with all the resources you need to do it right. You'd oversee youth programs not just here, but at centers throughout the city. Train other coaches, develop curricula, be the leader I always knew you could be. The gymnasium had gone. Quiet again, everyone waiting for Marcus's response. But he was remembering something else from their childhood. How Stephen had always seen potential in people before they saw it in themselves. Yes, Marcus whispered, then louder. Yes, absolutely yes. The celebration that followed was unlike anything the East Side Community Center had ever seen. Kids were crying, parents were laughing, and several people started an impromptu dance party on the basketball court. Local news crews captured every moment, but for Marcus and Stephen, the cameras faded into the background. They found themselves sitting on the bleachers where they used to watch older kids play. 2 men in their 30s feeling like the 12-year-olds who had first become friends in this very gym. Why? Marcus asked quietly. I mean, I understand helping the center, but why all this? The job, naming it after me. Stephen was quiet for a long moment, watching the celebration continue around them. Because you taught me something more important than basketball, Marcus. You taught me that success isn't about what you achieve for yourself. It's about what you make possible for others. Every championship ring I've won, every record I've broken, every time someone says I'm an inspiration, that all started with you believing in a scrawny kid who couldn't make his high school team. He turned to look at his friend. You've been living that lesson every day for the past 20 years. You've been Stephen Curry to hundreds of kids who needed someone to believe in them. This isn't charity, Marcus. This is justice. This is the world recognizing what you've been doing all along. As the sun began to set outside, casting long shadows across the basketball court where their friendship had begun, Marcus Williams realized that some dreams are bigger than we dare to imagine. He'd dreamed of helping kids in his community, and now he'd be able to help kids throughout the city. He dreamed of giving them the same gift Stephen had given him all those years ago, the belief that they could be more than their circumstances suggested. And Stephen Curry, watching his childhood friend wipe away tears of joy while surrounded by the kids whose lives he'd already changed, understood that this moment, this gesture of friendship and community, meant more to him than any trophy he'd ever won. The scoreboard on the wall still showed the final score from the tournament's championship game, but everyone in the building knew they'd all won something much bigger that day. 3 months later, the demolition and construction at what would become the Marcus Williams Community Center was in full swing. The sound of jackhammers and bulldozers had replaced the bouncing of basketballs, but the excitement in the neighborhood was palpable. Every day, kids would press their faces against the chain-link fence surrounding the construction site, watching their dreams take physical form. Marcus stood in the parking lot of a temporary facility across town, checking his phone for the latest updates from the construction crew. The foundation had found them space in an old warehouse while the renovation was happening, and somehow the kids were even more enthusiastic about their makeshift gym than they'd been about the old center. "Coach Marcus!" Destiny called out, running toward him with a basketball tucked under her arm. At 12 years old, she'd grown 3 inches since the day Stephen had visited, and her jump shot had improved dramatically. "Did you see the video?" Marcus smiled, knowing exactly what she meant. The footage from Stephen's surprise announcement had gone viral within hours, shared millions of times across social media platforms. But more than that, It had inspired something unexpected. A movement. Other NBA players had begun visiting community centers in their hometowns. Corporate sponsors had reached out to fund similar renovations. Youth basketball programs across the country reported increased enrollment and donations. What had started as a gesture of friendship between two men had somehow become a catalyst for change in communities nationwide. "I saw it, sweetheart. Pretty crazy, right? My dad says you're famous now," she said, bouncing the ball casually as they walked toward the warehouse entrance. "He showed me the article in Sports Illustrated where they called you the coach who changed the game." Marcus laughed. The media attention had been overwhelming at first. Interview requests, feature articles, speaking invitations. Suddenly everyone wanted to hear from the childhood friend who'd inspired Stephen Curry's biggest gesture of generosity. But Marcus had been selective, only accepting opportunities that could help highlight the work being done in communities across the country. "Fame is just noise, Destiny. What matters is the work we do every day." Inside the warehouse, 40 kids from ages 8 to 18 were running through drills that Marcus had adapted from his years of studying Stephen's training routines. The space was far from perfect. Concrete floors, harsh fluorescent lighting, and a ceiling that was barely high enough for proper shooting practice, but it buzzed with the same energy that the old community center had possessed. Marcus's phone rang, and he smiled when he saw the caller ID. "What's up, superstar?" he answered. "Just checking in on my favorite youth director," Stephen's voice came through clearly despite the construction noise in the background. "How are the kids adjusting to the temporary space?" "Better than I expected. Jamal organized a tournament bracket for after practice, and Destiny has been teaching the younger kids the shooting form you showed her. I think they're more excited about basketball now than they were before." "That's the magic of basketball," Stephen said. "It's never really about the building. It's about the community you create inside it." Marcus walked outside to continue the conversation, finding a quiet spot away from the construction sounds. "Speaking of community, did you see the news from Detroit? That community center renovation is finally happening." "Yeah, I heard. And the one in Oakland just got approved for funding, too." "It's incredible, Marcus. 3 months ago, we were just trying to help one community center, and now there are projects happening in 12 different cities." The ripple effect had surprised everyone, including Stephen's foundation team. Corporate sponsors, inspired by the viral story, had committed funding for similar projects across the country. Youth organizations were reporting increased volunteer applications. Other professional athletes were launching their own community-focused initiatives. "I got a call from the mayor yesterday," Marcus said. "She wants to expand the program to include academic tutoring and job training for older kids. Says the city is willing to provide additional funding." "That's amazing. What did you tell her?" Marcus grinned. "I told her we'd need to hire more staff, which means more jobs for people in the community. Funny how helping kids ends up helping everyone." There was a comfortable pause in their conversation, the kind that only exists between old friends. "Marcus," Stephen said finally, "I need to tell you something. This whole experience, coming back to Charlotte, seeing what you'd built, reconnecting with you, it's changed me too." "How so?" "I've been playing basketball professionally for over a decade, and sometimes it starts to feel like just a job. You know, all the pressure, the expectations, the business side of everything. But watching you work with those kids, seeing the pure joy on their faces when they make a shot or learn something new, it reminded me why I fell in love with the game in the first place." Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. "Steph, you've inspired millions of people around the world. You don't need me to remind you of anything." "But I do," Stephen insisted. "Success can be isolating, even when you're surrounded by people. It's easy to lose sight of what really matters. You kept me grounded, even from a distance, even when we weren't talking. Every time I saw a kid from a tough neighborhood pick up a basketball, I thought about us at 12 years old, believing we could change the world." Through the warehouse windows, Marcus could see his kids running shooting drills, their laughter echoing off the concrete walls. "Well, maybe we did change it, just not the way we expected." The construction supervisor says the new center should be ready by Christmas, Stephen said. I was thinking, what if we had a grand opening celebration? Invite all the kids from the programs we've helped start around the country, make it a real celebration of community basketball. Marcus's eyes lit up. That would be incredible. These kids have been following the other programs on social media, cheering for kids they've never met just because they share the same dream. Exactly. And Marcus, I want you to speak at the opening. Your story, your work, it's bigger than just Charlotte now. You've become a symbol of what's possible when someone dedicates their life to lifting others up. After they hung up, Marcus stood in the parking lot for a long time, watching his kids through the windows. 6 months ago, he'd been a relatively unknown community center coach, working 2 jobs to keep one small program running. Now he was overseeing youth development initiatives across multiple cities, fielding calls from mayors and corporate executives, and somehow serving as a role model for coaches and mentors nationwide. But the most meaningful change was the simplest one. His best friend was back in his life. Destiny appeared at his side, having finished her shooting practice. Coach Marcus, are you okay? You look like you're thinking about something serious. He put his arm around her shoulders. This girl who'd gone from being a shy kid with potential to a confident young leader who helped teach the younger children. Just thinking about friendship, sweetheart. About how sometimes the most important things in life are the ones we carry with us, even when we can't see them. She nodded solemnly, with the wisdom that kids sometimes possess. Like how Coach Stephen carried you in his heart even when he was far away. Exactly like that. As the sun set over Charlotte, casting long shadows across the temporary warehouse that had become a beacon of hope for dozens of kids, Marcus Williams understood that some stories don't have endings. They have new beginnings. The friendship that had started on a cracked asphalt court 25 years ago had somehow become a force for change in communities across America. And tomorrow, there would be more kids to coach, more dreams to nurture, and more proof that sometimes the greatest victories happen far from any arena, in the quiet moments, when we choose to believe in each other. The scoreboard in the warehouse still showed 0-0, waiting for the next game to begin. But Marcus knew the real score, a friendship that had survived 2 decades of separation, a community transformed, and countless lives changed by the simple act of believing in what's possible when we refuse to leave anyone behind. Outside, construction continued on the Marcus Williams Community Center, but inside the warehouse, the real building was happening one child, one dream, one friendship at a time.